Hey homies, it's Cooperton here with the last set from the Talara series. In the previous book, they went to the king and queen and then accused them of the treasonous act that led to the death of the royal family before them. And it turns out that there's a little bit more involved to it. They had to get these night blades involved from the Emperor, Uriel the Septim the Seventh, in order to make sure that they could succeed in their little coup here. The guards were called on them, told to take them in. They surprised them by having all these night blades appear out of nowhere, and then arrested the king and queen and took them to the royal prison. So we're going to go into this and see what the ending will be. This should be the last book of the series, The Mystery of Princess Talara Part 5 by Mira Lykith. We'll see what we can get, guys. It's going to be good. It's been a great story so far. By what right do you arrest my father? Cried Lady Gilia. What has he done? I arrest the King of Camlorn, the former Duke of Oloin, by my right as an Imperial Commanding Officer and Ambassador, said Lord Strail. By the right of law of the Emperor of Tamriel, which supersedes all provincial royal authority. Gina came forward and tried to put her hand on Gilia's arm, but she was coldly rebuffed. Quietly, she sat down at the foot of the throne in the now empty audience chamber. This young lady came to me, having completely recovered her memory, but the story she told was beyond incredible. I simply couldn't believe it, said Lord Strail. But she was so convinced of it I had to investigate. So I talked to everyone who was here at the palace 20 years ago to see if there could be any truth to it. Of course, at the time of the king and queen's murder, the princess's disappearance, there was a full inquiry made. But I had different questions to ask this time. Questions about the relationship between the two little cousins, Lady Gilia, Reyes, and the princess. I've told everyone over and over again I don't remember anything at all about that time in my life, said Gilia, tears welling up. I know you don't. There has never been a question in my mind that you witnessed a horrible murder, and that your memory lapse and hers, said Lord Strail, gesturing toward Gina, are both very real. The story I heard from the servants and the other people at the palace was that the little girls were inseparably close. There were no other playmates, and as the princess's place was to be close to her parents, so the little Lady Gilia was always there as well. When the assassin came to murder the royal family, the king and queen were in their bedroom, and the girls were playing in the throne room. When my memory came back to me, it was like opening a sealed box, said Gina solemnly. Everything was so clear and detailed, like it all happened yesterday, not 20 years ago. I was on the throne, playing Empress, and you were hiding behind the dais, pretending you were in a dungeon I had sent you to. A man I had never seen burst into the room from the royal bedchamber, his blade soaked in blood. He came at me and I ran for my life. I remember starting to run for the dais, but I saw your face, frozen in fear, and I didn't want to lead him to you, so I ran for the window. We had climbed on the outside of the castle before, just for fun. That was one of the first memories that came back to me when I was holding on to that cliff. You and I on the castle wall, and the king calling up to me, telling me how to get down. But that day, I couldn't hold on. I was trembling so much I just fell and landed in the river. I don't know if it was entirely the horror of what I had seen, or that combined with the impact of the fall and the coldness of the water, but everything just went blank in my mind. When I finally pulled myself out of the river many miles away, I had no idea who I was, and so it stayed, Gina smiled, until now. So you are the Princess Talara? Cried Gilia. Let me explain further before she answers that, because the simple answer would just confuse you as it did me, said Lord Strail. The assassin was caught before he managed to escape the palace. In truth, he had to know he was going to be caught. He confessed immediately to the murders of the royal family. The princess, he said, he had thrown out the window to her death. A servant down below heard the scream and saw something fly past his window, so he knew it to be true. It was not for several hours that the little Lady Gilia was found by her nursemaid, Romke, hiding behind the dais, coated with dust, shivering with fear, and unable to speak at all. Romke was very protective of you, Strail said, nodding to Gilia. She insisted on putting you to your own room right away, and sent word to the Duke of Oloin that the royal family was dead, and that his daughter had witnessed the murders but survived. I'm beginning to remember a little of that, said Gilia wonderingly. I remember lying in bed with Romke comforting me. I was so muddled and I couldn't concentrate. I remember I just wanted it all to be playtime still. I don't know why. And then I remember being bundled up and taken to that asylum. It'll all come back to you soon, Gina smiled. I promise. That's how I began to remember. I just caught one detail and the whole flood began. That's it, Gilia began to sob in frustration. I don't remember anything else except confusion. No, I also remember Daddy not even looking at me as I was taken away. And I remember not caring about that or anything else. It was a confusing time for all, so particularly so for little girls, especially little girls who went through what you two did, said Lord Strail sympathetically. From what I understand, as soon as he received the message from Romke, The Duke left his palace at Olorin, gave orders for you to be sent to a private sanitarium until you'd recovered from your ordeal, and set to work with his private guard torturing the assassin for information. When I heard that no one but the Duke and his personal guard saw the assassin after he gave his initial confession, and that no one was present but the Duke and his guards when the assassin was killed trying to escape, I thought that very significant. I spoke with Lord Errol, who I knew was one of those present, and I had to bluff him, pretending I had more evidence than I did. I got the reaction I was hoping for, though it was a dangerous gambit. At last he confessed to what I already knew to be true. The assassin, Lord Strel paused, and reluctantly met Gillia's eyes, had been hired by the Duke of Olorin to kill the royal family, including the princess as heir, so that the crown might be passed to him and to his children. Gillia stared at Lord Strel aghast. My father? The assassin had been told that once the Duke had him in custody, he would be paid and a prison break would be arranged. The thug picked the wrong time to be greedy and try to get more gold. The Duke decided that it would be cheaper to silence him, so he murdered him then and there, so the man would never tell anyone what really happened. Lord Strel shrugged. No tragic loss as far as murders go. In a few years' time, you returned from the sanitarium, a little shaken but back to normal, except for a complete absence of memory about your childhood. And in that time, the former Duke of Olorin had taken his brother's place as the King of Camlorn. It was no small maneuver. No, said Gillia quietly. He must have been very busy. He remarried and had another child. No one ever came to visit me in the sanitarium but Ramke. If he had visited and seen you, said Gina, the story might have turned out very differently. What do you mean? Asked Gillia. This is the most amazing part, said Lord Strel. The question has long been whether Gina is the Princess Talara. When her memory returned and she told me what she remembered, I put several pieces of evidence together. Consider these facts. The two of you look remarkably alike after 20 years of living very different lives, and as little girls and constant playmates, you looked nearly identical. At the time of the assassination, the murderer, who had never been there before, only saw one girl on the throne, who he assumed to be his quarry. The woman who found Lady Gillia was her nursemaid Ramke, a creature of unstable mind and fanatical devotion to her charge. The type would never accept the possibility that her beloved little girl had been the one who disappeared. The nursemaid was the only single person who knew both Princess Talara and the Lady Gillia who visited you while you were in the sanitarium. Finally, said Lord Strel, consider the fact that when you returned to court from the sanitarium, 5 years had passed, and you had grown from a child to a young lady. You looked familiar, but not quite the same as your family remembered you, which is only natural. I don't understand, cried the poor girl, her eyes wide because she did understand. Her memory was falling together like a terrible flood. Let me explain it like this, said her cousin, wrapping her in her arms. I know who I am now. My real name is Gillia Reyes. That man who was arrested was my father, the man who murdered the king, your father. You are the Princess Talara. Oh snap, huge twist at the end. So it turns out the prostitute is actually Gillia Reyes, and the person who thought that she was Gillia Reyes is Princess Talara and was being raised by the man who killed her father the entire time. Now, this is where it gets kind of funny, because way earlier, there was someone who actually pegged Gina as maybe the missing Princess Talara, saying how much he looked like her, but then after only 5 years of not seeing their own daughter, they thought that Gillia, who turns out to actually be Talara, was their daughter. So you're telling me that that one dude would peg the one person who turns out not to be Talara as Talara after 20 years, but her own parents couldn't tell apart the other cousin 5 years after they had seen her. Craziness, but what a great twist. So as it stands, Gillia Reyes, as she was presented, is actually Princess Talara. Guys, that was an amazing end to the story. I like that a lot. That's a crazy twist to have, but it was amazing. If you guys like this stuff, please hit that like button for me. Hit that subscribe if you'd like to see even more things. But for now, I just want to say I appreciate everyone who watches this. If you made it to the end, thank you so very kindly, and I hope you guys have a good one until the next time. Bye-bye, and appreciate you.